Tony Montgomery, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, man.
Mate, it's a pleasure to finally get to chat with you. Just for the couple of people that may not know who you are, as ridiculous as that sounds, can you just give us a quick highlight reel of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. And that doesn't sound ridiculous at all. There's probably a bunch of people that don't know who I am. But so I am a strength coach right now. I also own a supplement company, and I'm also a full-time student working on my master's degree and eventually my PhD in exercise science. I just moved to Tampa, Florida to pursue that. And I also have a gym in Portland, Oregon. So I run a gym as well. I've been doing the online coaching thing for about 8 years, and I've been a competitive lifter for the last decade, doing strongman and then ending with powerlifting, where I finished my powerlifting career, so to speak, with a 2,000-pound total. So I was happy with that, and now I've moved on to other things like jiu-jitsu and trying to just be a little bit healthier and educate as much as I can.
Was that 2,000-pound total, was that the goal of like, okay, once I hit this, then I'm done with powerlifting? Was that ever a thought?
No, that was the original goal once I started powerlifting, was the idea that like a 2,000-pound total was a big deal for my weight class at that time. So that was always kind of the arbitrary goal to reach. I did it at the US Open the first time, and then I did it again at Record Breakers. 2,006 pounds was my best total. And I was pretty satisfied with that, with the fact that I've been able to do all that and be relatively healthy at the age of 34. I didn't want to continue to pursue much beyond that. So it wasn't necessarily that was the ultimate goal, but it was good enough to fulfill what I wanted to fulfill within the sport.
Is there a sort of a moment in powerlifting where you think people need to sort of be happy with where they're at rather than trying to push, I guess, the extreme limits in terms of like longevity? Or do you think it's kind of cool in a sense to go, you know what, we need those people in the industry to just keep pushing those big totals because it allows other people to look up and go, this is actually possible?
Yeah, I think longevity should always be the pursuit if you want to be as strong as you can, right? Ultimately, the idea of instant gratification and trying to push drugs and push your limits is something that's going to leave a lot of negative residue behind, right? Whether it be a serious injury or whether it be health risks or health concerns, or whether it just creates something that's not fulfilling and obtainable or sustainable in someone's life, right? So the idea is, when are you going to be at your strongest? Probably 10 to 12 years into training. So you should set up your training, supplements, nutrition to maximize that in a longevity perspective, right? So your training shouldn't be so extreme that you're constantly injured and trying to push things too much to try to catch up with everyone else. And also drugs and things of that nature shouldn't be so extreme to where you're trying to be the best you can and do advanced cycles and things like that, for your first or second meet.
Yeah, and that's one thing I wanted to sort of touch on is that instant gratification. Is like, it seems like so many people now being in the fitness industry want to push their limits at a very, very early age. I'm talking like sort of pre-21 age, and start jumping on cycles and things of that nature without having a real lifting experience. And in the pursuit of what? In the pursuit of, sponsorships, in the pursuit of money,
Right.
in the pursuit of people looking at them and saying, good job, but now, the rest of your life's going to be fucked.
Right. I mean, it's the idea of like what motivates you to do the things that you do, right? Is it all extrinsic? Is it all the idea of somebody patting you on the back or a big total or nice trophy? Or is it the idea of an intrinsic motivation where you're driving yourself internally to be the best possible version you can be? I think that kind of ideology is going to set people up for just constant disappointment, right? Because you're putting yourself in a situation where no matter what you do, you're never going to be satisfied because you're always chasing after something that gives you that instant dopamine hit of external feedback and external stimulus. And it's one of those things that, for me, it's all about chasing happiness and fulfillment in my life. And if I can't do those things while pursuing a sport or an endeavor, then that's taken away from that. So then what's the point ultimately, right? So I think the idea is, enjoy the process, enjoy the people you're with, push to your limit, train hard, but don't try to do it all within one training cycle, right? Understand that your life is a mesocycle and you should be planning that out appropriately as much as you can, which is hard for younger people to do. But I think having that kind of hindsight looking back on it now is, one of the reasons why I've never had to have a surgery or didn't have any health issues or anything like that. And I've been doing it for over a decade.
Do you think, especially for the younger people listening, there's a combination of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, or does it need to be purely intrinsic, or a little bit mainly intrinsic, and then a tiny bit extrinsic? Do you think there's a combination of the two, or does it mainly have to be purely intrinsic for true fulfillment in the lifting world?
Yeah, fulfillment's a tough one to ever really dig into. Everyone's going to be different. If you look at some of the psychology research on extrinsic motivation and finding incentives to boost performance, one of the landmark studies was done on kids in art. And, all these kids like to draw. One group was incentivized to draw something, and they were given rewards for drawing. And another group was just drawing because they wanted to. And they found that the group that just drew because they wanted to actually continue to draw afterwards and enjoy drawing for a very long time, where the group who was incentivized, they ended up not liking drawing anymore. They didn't really feel like it was worth their time to do it because the incentive needs to get bigger and bigger every single time. So I think having mostly intrinsic values to drive you to compete and to go to the gym and to show up every day, the discipline that entails is something that's always worth pursuing, hand over heels over extrinsic motivation. I don't necessarily think that extrinsic motivation should ever be a factor that drives you to do the things that you do. If you're always after superficial things like money and fame and all this other stuff, research clearly shows that's not what actually makes you happy, right? It's like forming relationships, building a community, helping other people out. And I think you can do all that through that intrinsic drive, because that's all part of it, right? That's all part of creating what powerlifting does. That's so great. It creates a beautiful community of people trying to help each other out to get better. And I think that's going to supersede anything. And that comes from the inside. That doesn't come from the outside. I've seen a lot of guys chasing numbers that are dickheads. And it's because they're after that pursuit of chasing numbers where it's just about them, and life's not just about you. It has to be about the people that you're around and how can you benefit their life, not just how can they benefit yours.
Yeah, and I think it sort of brings us back to our primal mentality of just being in a tribe. We don't want to just pursue through life for our own needs. We want to be able to take people along with us, help other people, bring them up, so that collectively, as an entire species, we can keep innovating, moving forward, creating memories and telling stories.
Yeah, and you just live a longer, more fulfilling life, right? I mean, there's plenty of research out there showing that people that live in communities have really good relationships, live a happier and longer life. If you're constantly stressed out, if you're isolated, if you're just trying to do things on your own, your morbidity is decreased. Your risk of death is going to be exponentially higher.
Yeah, and I think you only really need to look at, if we're looking sort of kind of third world places, but there's a lot of places around here, in terms of like looking at the islands of like Fiji, that you go to a Fijian island, these small little villages, you could not find a happier place. There's no real wealth around in terms of monetary value or materialistic items, but they're the happiest kids and the happiest people in the world. And they're literally having a community where they're helping each other build their actual houses. They're actually, cooking food together and actually, farming foods together. And that's how they're building their society. It's just so inspiring to see. And you take a look at your own life and think, do I actually need any of this?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's all about your values, right? Your value systems and what you're trying to do with the life that you have, right? The constant idea of trying to help and better people around you to create a better life for yourself is something that's extremely powerful, right? And those values drive who you are as a person and the decisions you make. So always being able to question those and reinforce those so that you can continue to develop and grow is going to be the key to fulfillment and happiness for sure.
Mm. And we'll come back to this. I think it'll lead into passion, but I want to go back to sort of younger days, Tony, and see where all this started, where this your own passion for lifting and exercise, and potentially obviously going into the Marine Corps, where that started. Was it always something you wanted to do? Were you always into exercise, movement, fitness, sports when you were younger growing up?
Yeah, I played a lot of sports. I played mostly football, but I've also done a little bit of wrestling and baseball as well in high school and stuff. So that kind of always drove me, the idea of, putting in work is going to make you a better athlete. One of my favorite football players growing up was Bill Romanowski, and he was one of those guys that's known for his training and his work ethic and even his PED use. But obviously I wasn't too concerned about that at that young of age. But the idea that you can work in the gym and get better, which can improve your ability to be an athlete, was something around the age of 16 that I started to really focus on and tried to develop. And then joining the military made it even more of a endeavor that I wanted to pursue, because you have a lot of free time in the military and you got to fill it with something. And that's when I found things like Joe DeFranco's website and Elite FTS, and that kind of sparked my passion for exercise science. Like the fact that I could sit down and read for hours and hours their articles and their free content was something that kind of stuck with me. It's like, well, this is obviously something that I enjoy, because I've never been able to sit down and read anything like that before. And then the fact that I could put it into practical use was something that gave me a lot of, I guess, motivation to continue to pursue it, right? It's like every time I read something, I could try it out on myself. So I was constantly getting like a positive feedback loop, was getting a dopamine spike every time I could read something. That means I became a better athlete and a better Marine, right? So that was kind of the driving factor of that. And then once I got out of the military, it was focusing mostly on trying to pursue further education so that I could be a better coach and a better athlete myself. Because I was playing rugby at the time and doing MMA. So I was always trying to find ways to become a better athlete. And then I went to school at Florida Atlantic University for exercise science and pursued that and thought it would be a good idea to open up a gym. So I opened up a gym and started training athletes and just tried to visit places and learn as much as I could. One of the first places I visited before opening up my gym was I went to Joe DeFranco's gym for 2 weeks and learned from him and got to train with their NFL Combine guys. And that just so happened to be the year that Brian Cushion was there training for the NFL Combine. So I got to train with him and Dave Dill and a bunch of really high-level football players. That kind of reinforced the idea of continuing to pursue the passion of exercise science and helping people become better athletes. And then just from there, just trying to be a better athlete myself. It was always that feedback of, I'm not as good as I want to be. So how can I get better? Because there wasn't really online coaches or anything back then. It was mostly just trying to figure it out on your own. And thankfully, places like Elite FTS had articles that I could constantly read from strength coaches and things like that. So that's all I did, was go to seminars and read and try to implement that with the athletes that I was working with and within myself, as at that time I was doing strongman.
What did you, I'm a massive fan of Joe and his content. What did you take from Joe, like back then? What were a couple of the things that you learned training with those sort of caliber of athletes, and obviously Joe himself as well?
Right. So first thing I learned was that I have this confirmation bias that I like to try to always get right. So I saw his gym. I was like, okay, so we're doing the same thing. So I'm doing the right thing. And it's like, well, yeah, that's because you're confirming your biases. So it taught me that at a young age, that I have these biases, that I'll go to places that are very much like the one that I have to confirm that I'm doing the right thing. So it taught me that, to try to challenge myself and look beyond the confirmation biases. But one of the biggest things it taught me was that Joe himself and his gym, they just didn't train athletes. They had to train, regular everyday people trying to lose weight. And that's how they had to that's what they used to pay the bills. So that put things into perspective, like from a business standpoint of, I can't just build a facility where I'm only training athletes. I have to train general population if Joe DeFranco is training general population, I have to train general population. It taught me about group training, the aspects of being able to consolidate like-minded people in the same group and training them very, very much in the same manner can build better results and bigger success within those athletes just by having that camaraderie, having that competitive spirit and that community that you're building up instead of doing the one-on-one training. So those were the three biggest takeaways, and just kind of also too how he structured things, right? Because they were doing a lot of the agility stuff. They were doing a lot of the combine stuff. So how do you structure those things in order to facilitate fatigue management and still allow them to make progress? And that was back in the day where Joe was really much into the West Side stuff. Now he has a guy, Cameron Josie, I think is how to pronounce his name. And they do things a little bit more different, a little bit different. And it's nice to see that evolution, right? That he's constantly evolving his mindset from what worked in the past to what's working now. And that's just something that I've seen just following along with him through his entire career, is the fact that he's always evolving as a coach. And I noticed that too in the beginning, because I would go back and read his original Q&As and I would see how his answers evolved throughout the years, because he put out a lot of free content. So it always made me keep an open mind when it came to my own thoughts and my own process of how I do things, and not really focus so much on a dogmatic approach of this is the only way to train people, but focus more on the approach of stress management and fatigue management and things like that are the main drivers of program design and periodization within an athlete.
So I love what you said about there was about Joe and seeing where he's adapted. I think a lot of the times, like, coaches have this dogmatic approach of like, this is the only way and I can't change this, and think that if they potentially change, then people are going to view them as wrong or incorrect, and they're going to seem less educated, less knowledgeable. What are your sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's something that's very prevalent within not only the coaching community, but the science community as well, right? Like, now that I'm in my master's program, I see that a lot of researchers are forced into this bubble of this is their research and this is what they're known for, because that's what the college wants them to do, right? They want them to focus on one thing and get really good at one thing. So when they do that and they put all their marbles in to that one spot and they find evidence that may prove them wrong, they just stick to that, right? It's like, it's very much like religion, right? Where you're brought up as a Christian and you're taught all the stories of the Bible and you're taught to believe in God and in Jesus Christ. And then all of a sudden you read about dinosaurs and you read about, all these fossils that they're finding that predate the Bible. And you're like, wait a minute, this totally conflicts with everything that I've known and how I've identified myself with. So the idea of identifying yourself as a program or as a methodology is definitely something that coaches should not do, right? You should identify yourself as a coach more so than anything else, not as a specific periodization model or a specific program. As soon as you start naming things after yourself, like, Stan Efferdin's known for the vertical diet. So if he does any other diet, then that's going to look bad on his brand. That's going to hurt his bottom dollar. So he's pigeonholed himself into believing that that's the only diet that really moves the needle. And it's like, well, clearly that's not the case, right? Clearly there's any diet will work for anyone. You just have to find the thing that you can adhere to. Same thing with training, right? So having that open mind of not being dogmatic and being able to continue to adapt your process and challenge your process, I think is extremely important. A good person that does that is James Smith. He is now an independent contractor, but he used to be a strength and conditioning coach with Buddy Morris at the University of Pittsburgh. And he's someone that is now pushing the holistic approach of taking every single thing and being able to adapt that to the athlete more so than just creating a program and then having the athlete adapt to your program. You have to adapt to the athlete, the individual, more so than trying to get them to adapt to your biases and norms.
I guess that could sort of correlate to even lift, squat, dead, bench, and like people trying to go, okay, you've got to fit the lift. Rather than going, no, we've got to take that lift and try and fit the athlete and their mechanics and how they actually move and their level of skill acquisition, etc.
Yeah, you're 100% right, man. The idea of trying to force an upright posture on someone that's morphologically not going to keep an upright posture, you're just continuing to beat a dead horse, right? And it's the idea that every athlete's going to have its own dynamic, its own bone structure, its own morphology, its own injury history, training history. So you have to allow them to find that position that they feel the strongest in, they feel the most comfortable in. And then as a coach, you readjust and refine those positions and those movements by not changing what the athlete's doing, but just by making those things stronger, right? And being able to assess accessories to build on their dynamics that they've already had for the last 1 to 10 years, right? You're trying to change something that bone structure is going to dictate is impossible to do. So you're fighting an uphill battle the entire time.
Yeah, I consult with some coaches, and they generally train Gen Pop, and some of the video assessments they'll send me is like, I can't get my client, for example, in a deadlift to maintain like this upright torso, and these clients are like tall people too, and I'm just like, what makes you think that this 6'5" guy has to maintain like this upright torso? That's how you do the deadlift. I was like, no, you're thinking about it incorrectly. And we adjusted a couple of things, and his lifts went up very, very quickly. And the guy was like, oh, my back doesn't hurt anymore because I'm into a position where I feel strong. It's like, bear in mind, this particular client was 45 years old and only just started the gym. I'm like, he's been moving this way for 45 years. You can't just change everything about him in one session.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, man. The idea of monitoring, assessing what the client can do, and then finding accessories to build upon what maybe some of those weaknesses could be is the idea when it comes to program and design.
Being a competitive powerlifter, and obviously going more into the bodybuilding style world, do you have a favorite training methodology yourself? Something that you enjoy more?
In terms of like bodybuilding versus powerlifting?
Yeah. Do you want, is it kind of adapted over time now?
No, it's definitely bodybuilding for
Yeah.
sure. Like I enjoy those sets, especially like on hack squats where you feel like your legs aren't working anymore and you feel like the weight's going to crush you and the fatigue is so high and you're just shaking the entire time. Like that pain and that suffering, I love that so much, man. And I think that's because I live a very comfortable life. So if I can create some type of adversity through training and pain through training, that's going to lend itself to a little bit more of a complete and realistic approach to like my mindset and stuff. Where powerlifting is great. I do enjoy the aspect of getting under a weight that can pretty much cripple you, but that pursuit of pushing to like an absolute failure point and then trying to go beyond that when your whole body is telling you you should quit. I love that. That's like, it's a constant battle every time you go to the gym, and you don't get that with powerlifting because training to failure in powerlifting is something that is going to result in poor motor mechanics. It's going to result in poor technical and high amounts of fatigue. And you're not really going to get strong that way, right?
I know exactly what you're feeling on the hat squat of mine. Mine was very similar when I did my first hypertrophy boot camp with Poliquin, and it was on the pendulum squat to like utter failure. So you couldn't walk afterwards, and it was great in the class because everybody was just crawling. Like there was not a person that could stand there. There was just something so strangely motivated. You're like, fuck yeah, I want that feeling again.
Right. Yeah. I love it, man. I love that nervous, anxious feeling of having to go to the gym and trying to put yourself through that brutality each and every time.
Yeah, there's something quite powerful about it. And it actually leads into a question on life in the Marine Corps. What lessons did you take from that you applied in training? And were there any lessons that you took from the discipline in the Marines that you applied in training?
That's just it, man. Discipline, right? Like the idea of having to show up to work and do your job when you don't want to is something that I took from that, right? Because you have to show up every day. If you don't, especially overseas, then you're putting your life at danger and you're putting someone else's life at danger. And the idea of having perfect days every single day of your life and you can just feel that motivation and you're just excited to get there every single day is not realistic. So that discipline of you have to do it, right? That's, you have to check off certain boxes throughout the day in order for you to be successful, in order for you to stay alive. That's something that was, you know, extremely beneficial about the military, because it allows me to push through days that maybe aren't necessarily what I would consider ideal in terms of where my motivation is and how much work I want to get done. So I think that was one of the biggest things. I think that leadership in and of itself is a big one to take in, because as a coach and trying to build a community of athletes that buy into what you're doing and trust you, there's a bunch of leadership principles that you have to take into account in order for you to be a successful coach. It's not just you're a good programmer. It's also creating that community environment where people trust what you have to say, where you can continue to create that buy-in. So that leadership factors of being able to create an open environment where everyone feels comfortable to share their opinion and feel comfortable to just be themselves, and also feel like they have an opinion and they have a voice. I think that's extremely important from a leadership perspective. And then also the ability to guide and to manage people's emotions and your own emotions, and to make sure that you take that into account is something that's been extremely valuable.
Yeah, I think I love what you said there about leadership, about being open enough to listen to other people's opinions. It's the only way we can drive innovation, rather than saying, no, this is the way because, I'm top dog. It's my opinion. It's my company. It's like, well, cool. But, how do you move forward from that? How do you take into other people's perspectives? People look at things in a different way. They may look at things in a better way than you that you're unaware of, until you allow them as a leader to speak up and be like, hey, voice your opinion. I need to know when I'm being a dickhead, or if I'm in a bodybuilding prep, if I'm just stressed out as hell. You need to tell me these things.
Yeah, I think having the idea of that other people's opinions are valuable, and having the idea where you build a certain dialogue that allows them to feel comfortable to challenge and ask questions is important. I've heard of so many coaches that feel like when a lifter asks them a question about their program, they get defensive about it. And it's like, well, yeah, this is your opportunity to show that lifter you know exactly what you're doing, and to create trust with that lifter by answering that question so thoroughly that they don't really have anything else to say about it, right? But you're also understanding that you're respecting their opinion, and you're respecting that they know their body better than you do. And if you don't value what they're saying, you're just an idiot as a coach.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing I talk with my own clients is my job is to educate you enough so that there's a time and a moment where, as coaches, we're not going to always work with our clients for the rest of their lives. But if I can educate you enough that you're like, you know what, I can take control of my life. I've got this increased sense of self-empowerment now. I can continue to do this on my own. Great, fucking go for it, because there's plenty of other people out there that need help and guidance.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, man. That's beautifully said.
I want to go back to something we touched on when we were talking about the study with kids, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And I think that can somewhat come down to passion and this natural passion it seems like you have. And I'm interested in knowing how you let that passion drive your actions in business and education. Starting with business, how you let what you believe and what you love drive your intents in business.
It's a good question. I don't know if I let that drive necessarily my intent in business. I try to disassociate passion from the idea of business, because once you start combining them together, it can create a lot of angst and turmoil with the two, right? So I always try to think of business as a separate entity from the passion of being a coach and being an educator. If I can focus on being the best coach that I can be and being the best educator that I can be, then the business aspect will always be there. I'll end up making enough money. I'll end up doing those things. So the passion to drive business is never really there, right? Like, I don't think of numbers. I don't think of quarterly reports. I don't think of business goals or anything like that. I've never thought of, well, I have, when I originally started, I thought of in those terms. And I was making really good money and I hated it. I didn't enjoy it because my only goal was how much money could I make? And now it's mostly about, well, how many people can I help? Right. And I think that is the passion that drives what I do. And then a business just comes out of it. And I've just been lucky enough to create a passion that I get paid for. But I don't ever think of it in terms of business pursuits and business endeavor. Everything that I do is with the idea of, can I do it better, and can I help a bunch of people by doing it?
I love that. I don't think it could be ever put better. What about in terms of education? Obviously, putting a lot of really, really good quality content out there. How do you think about putting out specific parts of, I guess, of education? And I want to try and explain this, is that where we spoke about earlier, even looking at DeFranco as an example, there were certain methodologies that he believed in at the time, and now he's adapted and changed. How do you think about putting out education, knowing that, okay, if I'm believing this now, there could be a study done right at this moment in time that could contradict what I've just said? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, contradiction's good, right? Like, I think having just opposed ideas to challenge your ability to have creative thoughts is something that you need, that's vital, right? I think fully understanding what you're trying to do and being able to express that within your athletes is the most important thing. Now, if you have a study that contradicts what you've been doing, that doesn't necessarily mean what you've been doing is wrong. That just means that this study for this particular cohort proves something that may interest you to look into, so that you can start to have that open mind and that open dialogue of, why did this become better, right? But I'd never, the idea of putting out content and doing that type of stuff, education, is built through 7 to 8 years of training people. And then it's like, okay, well, now I feel comfortable with what I'm putting out there. And I think that's a big problem within the industry now, is the idea that people want to generate content so they can be a coach. And it's like, well, that's great, but why don't you try being a coach first and then put out content? And no one wants to do that. Everyone wants to put out content because it's easy. It's easy to read a study and say, well, look, this is what this study said. And it's like, okay, well, who have you done this with? And they're like, well, no one, but this study said it. And it's like, well, that doesn't mean shit to me, right? It's like, you have to put in work. You have to get under the bar. And that's what drives education. Myself and my partner, Trevor, who does, we do a podcast together, and we also have a business that we're putting together. The idea of creating content is based on what your athletes ask you. So if you don't have any athletes, if you're not actually coaching anyone, what meaningful content are you putting out there? You're not actually helping anyone. So that's something that I really try to focus on as an educator, is like, am I answering a question that was asked of me, or am I able to answer questions that are constantly asked? And how much context can I provide? Because there's so many conceptual ideas out there to where you can't ever put a black and white statement out there. And I know a lot of coaches do that now. They put dogmatic viewpoints or black and white statements to cause some type of controversy so that people can start talking about them so they feel special, and it's like, who cares how you feel, right? Are you putting out good quality content that actually has conceptual ideas to it with context, right? Because context is everything. I can answer a question for a lifter, and that's for that specific lifter, right? And you have to be able to, so when you're thinking about discerning what kind of content, how to educate people and how to be helpful, is you have to put so much caveats and context to it, to where people are able to grasp the bigger concept. And that's the way I look at it when it comes to the education part of things, is like trying to grasp a bigger concept of what we're trying to say, instead of just focusing on the micro thing, is the only way you can do it. And if you can continue to put out those bigger ideas and those bigger concepts, then it allows people to have creative thought process within their own framework, so that they can take that and put that into their own training. But if you give these black and white approaches and these dogmatic views, people take that and they think this is the only way it can be done. And they don't have that creative thought process. And that causes a lot of issues, because good coaches are creative, right? How else are you going to be able to manipulate a program if somebody's not making progress? Or how else are you going to be able to fix an issue if you see that within their videos? Or if somebody gets injured, you have to adjust things on the fly. And that takes creative thought process, not dogmatic approaches to things.
Yeah, this is one of the issues I have with some, not all, but online coaches, where someone's got a great good physique, whether that is PD driven or otherwise, or genetically driven, and they go, cool, now I'm going to start coaching people. And I'm like, but how? Like, where are you getting this information from? How are you making it contextual to each individual that you're training? And as you said, it's just like, you've never trained somebody in person. So how do you know what the fuck's actually going on? Yeah, theoretically, your program might work for 3 or 5 people out of the 100 people that you might apply it to, but you've got to know what's going to work with every single individual and not treat every person as the same. You've got to be able to adjust and adapt. And if this person can't perform this particular movement because their femurs are 9 feet long, then how do you make that still recruit quad? And let them still get to where they sort of want to be. You know, it's one of the issues I do have with online coaches because of that. And for the most part, some of them don't even have their basic certification. So I'm like, so where does your internal sort of dialogue go off there of, I feel comfortable enough telling other people what to do in terms of their nutrition and their health and their lifestyle, even though I have really no idea what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah. And, everyone, you have to start somewhere, right? But you don't have to start as an authority figure. And I think that's what a lot of people have a hard time discerning, because they immediately want to be like, I want to be an online coach. I want to grow this community. I want to be like this person that I look up to. And it's like, you can't automatically become an authority and put out content, right? You can become a coach and you're going to make mistakes, right? And that's just the way it is. And that's just how life goes. You're going to make mistakes when you try things out. You're never going to be perfect. So don't ever let the idea of, I would need to be the smartest and best coach before I can actually start coaching. So I'm going to read a bunch of books, get my master's degree, get my PhD before I can actually coach people. It's like, well, that doesn't make you a good coach either. I know a lot of people with PhDs that are dumb as shit when it comes to coaching, but they can tell you everything that is contextual about a certain thing that they've studied. So the idea is getting experience and working with people and just fully understanding how to communicate and how to find answers to questions that they ask you. It's not so much that you should know everything, but you should know how to find those answers, and you should know people that can give better answers. And then you continue to network and spread those thoughts out there. So that's going to make you a coach, right? The idea that you need to immediately be an authority figure is just asinine and silly. It just shows that your ego is taking control of your ability to actually want to help and discern information.
What are your current thoughts, I guess, on the state of the fitness industry, how it is, and how can we do better in that space as coaches, as educators?
Yeah, I think it's getting better, especially within the idea of people putting out helpful content and just really genuinely caring about the people they work with. So I definitely think it's getting better in that aspect. I think the idea should be on how can we help people, not so much on how can we get the best results so that I can post it up on Instagram so people think that I'm a successful coach. One of the biggest issues I have is that people believe that, say for instance, like people believe that calories in versus calories out is the only thing that matters when it comes to losing weight. So they'll diet people down to these levels where they don't consider hormones and they don't consider anything that actually goes on within the human body, right? And they deplete these people so much to where it takes them years to get better and get back to where they were. And it was just because they had this idea that, science says X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to do everything based off of science. And it's like, well, science is also 10 years behind what actual practitioners do, right? Science needs to use the practitioners that are getting results to drive the science. So I think there's just a disconnect between the evidence people and the actual anecdotal people. They use this term evidence-based training and evidence-based coaching, and they only focus on the scientific evidence. They don't focus on the anecdotal evidence, which is just as important, if not more important, because you're dealing with individual people where science deals with averages. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I see right now that is getting misrepresented, because it's those kids who are just getting out of school or in school, and they're like, I'm learning so much stuff. I'm such a great coach. Let me put out all these studies. And it's like, well, you haven't actually ever coached anyone. so what does your studies actually mean? And they're like, well, I don't know, but this is the study. And it's like, and then they shit on anecdotal people who've been putting in the experience for 10, 20 years, and they may think it's the stupidest thing in the world, but they're getting results and they're not fucking people up. So it's just kind of finding that balance of taking the science, taking the anecdotal, but the most important thing is just actually caring about the health of your athletes, right? I know so many coaches who work with athletes and they don't even get blood work done. And it's like, have you ever got blood work? It's like, no, I don't even know how to read blood work. Then you're not a coach, right? That's not good for the industry. Don't be a nutrition coach. Don't be a health coach if you don't know how to do blood work. You can train people for sure, but it's like people are always after the end result instead of actually trying to be someone that's pushing the industry forward and making people healthier. They're always just trying to make people look a certain way. And it's like, well, people look better when they're healthy, and no one contextualizes that. No one thinks about that. And I think that's the biggest problem right now with the health and industry more than anything, is this idea that we want to be authorities right away without actually putting in the work. And we're so focused on the results that we actually don't take the time to get to know the client, the psychology behind it, and the health behind it, right? And I think that's leaving people in disastrous spots. Like, you can get people lean, but then what happens afterwards? Like, what do they look like 2 years from now? What do they look like 5 years from now? Are they still recovering their hormones? Are they still trying to get healthy because you fucked them up? And I think a lot of people just focus on trying to grab that dollar and get people wherever they think they want to go without actually thinking about the ramifications of it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said exactly what you said better. And it's interesting, right? Like, people just want to look at that bottom line of like, I want to get as many transformations as I can. It's going to make me look better as a coach. And, I want to get it through as many people as I can. It's going to make me earn more money. And like, well, if you do it right, this one person over their lifetime could be with you for 5 years. You're going to earn a decent amount of coin just doing that. And if you don't know, if you can't read, as you said, blood works, then refer out, work with a nutritionist, work with someone who actually can, and say, look, here's what I'm doing with this client. I need to get their bloods done. I can't read them. Would you mind working with me to help them? And again, I guess it comes back to that underlying factor of like, just actually giving a shit about the client.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, man, is making sure that you actually care. If you don't care, then don't be a coach. So many people think a lifestyle of being a coach and being an online coach is where it should be. And they just focus on that, and they don't actually focus on actually caring about making a difference in people's lives. And I think once you do, it gives you a better grasp of it, right? Like, when I first started my gym, when I was in Florida, I had this one lady come to the gym, and she was probably about 80 pounds overweight, antidepressive medicine, blood pressure medicine, and got her to lose, all the weight she needed to lose. She got off all her meds and completely changed her life. And then her husband came to the gym, then their kids came to the gym, then her mom came to the gym, and their whole family changed their entire trajectory of what their lives would have looked like. And that's because someone gave a damn, and someone wanted to help them out, and someone cared about what they were going through. It wasn't just about, I want to get you to look a certain way so I can take pictures and get more clients to keep paying me. It's like, I actually gave a damn about their family, their health, where they're going to be at, what they're going to do with their kids. And I just don't think people value that enough, man.
Yeah, I completely agree. I had a similar sort of experience with one of my clients, and we were fat loss again was the goal, and nutrition seemed to be on point. Everything it was telling me was, very much sticking to the plan. Still wasn't losing weight, and I had to delve a little bit deeper. This took months and months and months, and find out that this particular guy was also a recovering alcoholic as well, and he ended up like relapsing back into drinking a fair bit through some personal issues. And I was like, I can't get you to where you want to be without some more help. So I found a local AA group and a therapist, and he went and started working with that person. And it only took him a couple of months to get back on track. And this guy ended up dropping all the weight and keeping it off for the next 3 years. And I'm still working with this guy sort of here and there, just to help him out with some little issues that he's got. But it was so gratifying knowing that you don't just have to stick to the nutrition and the training. It's about going above and beyond for your clients. And like, how do I help your lifestyle? How do I help your health? How do I help you move forward towards your goals? And knowing those goals aren't just aesthetically. Some people are like, okay, I just want to lose some weight. I don't give a fuck about being 4% body fat. I just want to be healthy again. I just want to not be relapsing into alcohol or drug addiction or binge eating.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the only professions where you can make an impact on someone's life in a positive or a very negative way. And it's up to you as a coach. Do you want to be part of the problem, or do you want to be part of the solution and driving the industry forward? And I think having that approach of, you know, I can change someone's life. I can give them bigger goals and bigger life goals than just losing weight, right? How can we change their lifestyle? How can we create happiness? How can we create purpose and fulfillment beyond just how they look, right? And I think that that's something that goes back to those extrinsic values, right? If you're constantly trying to chase a number or a look, you're not actually trying to be a better human. How can we make people better humans? How can we make them healthier? How can we make their life be impactful to everyone around them, and more so, right? Because we're creating a certain type of lifestyle, a certain type of a holistic approach to where everything is important to them, not just numbers on a scale, not just numbers on a platform, but life becomes valuable. And I think that that's the important driver for a coach to be focusing on. Is you're not just a number counter, you're not just a programmer, but you're also impacting people's lives.
Yeah, I often give the example is like being in the industry we are as a health and fitness professional, where the front line after someone's seen a doctor, they come to us next. It's like they don't go to any other specialist. It's like, okay, I need you to be able to take control and help me with my whole life, and you can contribute to my life about making it longer or making it short, depending on how you treat me. And it's why I think it's ridiculous people going through a 6-week online personal training course and going, okay, that's everything. I don't need to do any other further education. Like, no. You've just got your L's. You've got your learning certificate to go, okay, now I can go and learn fucking more things.
Yeah, that's what I tell people, man. You can get your education, but that's just getting you in the front door. Now it's time to learn, and now it's time to grow as a coach, right? And I think it's just a constant pursuit of continued education, continued evolution as a human being and as a coach in order for you to get better, because people constantly evolve, right? The person you're training last month is a completely different person this month. So how do you make those adjustments to fit those needs and those demands? How do you continue to create adaptation and stimulus, but also take into account that, you know, maybe their stress is at an all-time high, and then continue to periodize and waive those things based off of what the person is going through, not just based off of what maybe the science says is the best thing to do.
That, I think, brings us into self-development in itself. And obviously someone like yourself is just doing a ton of things. And for some people, it could be quite overwhelming of like, oh shit, like I might be, 30 something years old and wanting to change my career path and get into the health and fitness industry. And I want to change people's lives and inspire them to make better choices in their life. Where do they start? Especially the people that are starting later in life. Where do they start with their own self-development? Is it books? Is it university? Is it courses? What do you think?
Yeah, it's starting, right? If you want to be a coach, you get under the mentorship of someone that's a great coach, and you learn to start coaching first and foremost. Is school important? Maybe, right? But learning the physiology and learning nomenclature doesn't make you a great coach. There's a lot of great coaches who have never gone to school. So it really just depends on financially where you're at within your life when you're starting, if school is a good fit, right? But finding the right mentor, finding the right person, the one that you look up to within your community, and just hiring them to guide you and teach you, to work under them, to intern at places, right? I think that that's lost amongst a lot of people, is the fact that, how can you get better as a coach? Well, you just go and do some free work and you learn as much as you can. Everybody wants to show up and get paid with their hand out. And it's like, sometimes you just got to work for free. And that's the best way to learn, right? So if you're someone who's starting off and you have a career that you're not really satisfied with, but you're thinking about switching to becoming a personal trainer or a coach, depending on what you want to coach will depend on your education level, right? If you want to be a strength and conditioning coach at a collegiate level, then yeah, you have to go to school. But if you just want to be a personal trainer, then you go and find the smartest, best personal trainer around and you say, hey, I want to pay you this amount of money for you to teach me what you know. And then you learn from that person and you work with that person and you help and you go through their clients with them and you ask questions. And that's going to be the best way to learn without you having to stop everything that you're doing. So, you know, the fact that you just want to get started, but you also don't want to put yourself in such a deficit to where you rely on your new passion to pay the bills. So I would keep the job that I have while I'm starting to build up my criteria and my credibility as a coach. And then once I start picking up clients, I'll wait until my client load gets to the point where I can actually survive before switching the job out. But I think finding a place where you can intern or mentor under is going to be the best and most practical way to becoming a good coach. And then from there, right, your mentor or your internship place, if it's good, they'll give you things to look up. They'll give you books to read. They'll tell you what to go read. They'll tell you what to go pursue in terms of furthering your education. But if they don't, then that's something that you have to focus on in your free time, right? Quit watching TV at night. Read a book about periodization. Read a book about nutrition if that's really what you love to do. So it is going to take a lot of work, but I think finding that mentor program and finding the right person to learn under is the most valuable thing you can do when you feel like you're starting at a late point in your life.
What about the people that are just getting in the industry? Have you any advice for these people to help them not just fall into the trap of, hey, I've got my 6-week online certification now, that's everything? What about these people? What should they be doing after they get the initial certification?
Yeah, they should just start coaching people, right? Like if they get their certification and they can go to a 24-hour gym and start being a personal trainer and just trying to do what they can within their scope of practice of what they know and not trying to reach outside the box to create some type of paradigm that they think should be done if they don't know how to do it. But the best way to become a good coach is to start coaching people and learning and paying attention to how people are doing things and how to adjust things. And then continuing to learn about the idea of human movement and biomechanics and how the human body works is going to be the place where I would start. So there's good resources out there, right? And you can go and find those resources online to continue to further that education as well. So that's kind of the thing that I would do is just, you want to start coaching the people that you feel comfortable coaching based off of your body of knowledge. And then as that body of knowledge grows, then you can start reaching out and coaching other people. So you may not necessarily get to coach the people that you want to at first. And that's just the way it is. You have to build up your credibility. You have to build up your actual, knowledge base to coach. And then from there, you just continue to grow and refine. But it's just getting out there and doing it. You can read all the books you want. You can look at all the studies you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean you know how to coach people. So you just have to coach to figure it out. And it could be the same thing of finding a good program. I know that there's some big box gyms that put people through 6-week courses in order for them to learn on the go and get paid for it. So you just have to find the right spot that gives you the things that you're looking for. If you're not really comfortable with getting thrown into the water right off the bat.
Yeah, I love what you said there. You got to be willing to coach people that you may not necessarily want to coach. When I first got my certification, I was playing professional rugby league in the UK. I was like, this is awesome. I'm just going to train professional fucking athletes. This is great. And then when I started, I was like, where are all these athletes at? I got this woman here who can barely walk. She's got these knee and back issues and stuff. I was like, what the hell's going on? It was like really quite a humbling experience of like, oh shit, I got to like baby this person. This person can barely walk. I got to learn to like pick her up and, actually teach her the fundamentals of just movement. I can't just go and train and teach these athletes, and test their 1RMs and all that sort of fun stuff. Like this,
right.
This is not where you start. It's where you build up to.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the right approach, right? Because you're not ready to coach rugby athletes. You'd be doing them a disservice, right? But teaching an old lady how to use a machine, you can't really fuck that up, right? So putting yourself in situations where you're constantly winning and constantly doing good by people is where you want to be at in the very beginning. This idea that And say for instance, like in your situation where you are coaching people that you may not want to coach in the very beginning, and you want to be a professional coach at a high level for rugby players, you just go find a rugby team and intern. Like, hey, I'll mop the floors, I'll work for free, I'll do whatever I can. I just want to be around you guys, right? And that's how you learn from that experience while being able to coach people and get experience that way as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one thing I love about the rise of sort of social media is that it's allowed people, very educated people such as yourself, like Dr. John and Shallow and Luke Lehman from Muscle Nerds, and lots of other people to come and create courses and create educational tools where people can, instead of looking around going, I don't know what the fuck to do, you're like, cool, you scroll on Instagram 5 hours a day, awesome. Go and find these people who are doing some real good in this industry, and you can bypass a lot of that other shit that you've been trying to do through reading, crappy little magazines and stuff here and there and listening to other idiots.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid point, man, especially with the pandemic happening this year. Everyone's moved to online, and so now you have more opportunities than ever to learn from some of the best coaches and best people in the industry because they've pivoted to online education. It's just a matter of discerning who's good and who's bad, right? And podcasts are a great way to do that, right? You listen to a podcast, like, this guy sounds like an idiot, I'm not going to listen to him. This guy sounds really smart, let me check out his stuff. But always keep an open mind. Don't necessarily fall in love with one person just because they sound great, right? Like, you can listen to Jordan Shallow and be like, this guy's a genius, everything he says is gold. And it's like, well, no, you should be able to challenge him on some things because he's going to say some fucked up stuff sometimes. And it's going to be like, all right, well, how do I learn from that, right? It's not like everything he says is the end all be all. So I think that's important whenever you go into these courses and programs, is to not necessarily just always fundamentally believe everything that they say 100%.
Yeah, and that's where I guess the fun of diving down lots of different rabbit holes here and there and figuring out and creating your own perspective and opinion on things. I remember the first time I met Jordan was here in Sydney at a workshop, and I think it was like the first presentation was like 3 hours long or something, and I did not understand a damn thing. I was like, yo, you're way too smart for me to be listening to. Do you know what I mean? But it was also a great experience because I thought, oh, I'm decent enough as a coach, been doing this for a long time now. And then Jordan came and I was like, oh, I know nothing. So I need to pull my finger out of my ass and step the hell up and do more research into his methodologies and other people's methodologies. And that's how I came onto yourself and just trying to broaden your horizon about try to think about not one person's going to have all the answers. You've got to be willing to research and put the time into educating yourself as much as possible for as many different sources as possible.
Yeah, if you don't like going down rabbit holes, you're in the wrong business, man, because that's really all it is the idea of, I learned this. Well, what can I find that tells me that what I learned is not necessarily accurate? Okay, well, this tells me that this isn't the right way to do it. So let me go down that rabbit hole, see why that's the case. And it's just a constant evolution of learning, understanding you're going to make mistakes. But if the intention is to do no harm and try to help people, you're never going to be in the wrong. You're never going to be in a bad place. And I think that's really the main focus and the key thing there is the idea of, just trying to create an environment where you're not overstepping your boundaries and you're just focused on helping people, right? Doing good. I think that's important. And I think the idea of like continuing education, following smart people, and because as a beginner, you're going to think like, I've done a course, I know everything there is. And it's like, and I was the same way. I was like, I know everything. I went to DeFranco's. I'm a great coach. I got it all figured out. And then you get around people who are smarter than you. And you're like, and then the more you study and the more you read, you're like, I don't know anything. The smarter I get, the more I realize I know absolutely nothing. Like, I hang around Ben Bukolsky. I hang around Dr. Scott Stevenson, Jordan, all these guys who are infinitely smarter than me in certain paradigms. And it's like, fuck, I got a lot of work to do, but it's also good, right? It's also the idea like, well, these guys are just regular guys. They just love learning about this stuff. And it's like, there's nothing different about them than me to where I can't be on that level. So I think it's humbling, but it's also motivating as well to continue to push yourself to those limits by being around those people that are smarter than you. So it's a constant flux of just trying to challenge yourself, be around people that are smarter, continue to grow. And just, I think that's the most important stuff, man.
And it's great that people like yourself and like Jordan that are so passionate about what they do, because you take your education to a whole new level, and then people that, you know, aren't quite as smart getting in the industry can now go, oh, I've got someone to now learn from. Because if you weren't as passionate about it, you weren't willing to push the boundaries and ask the right questions and try and contradict your own self with your own beliefs and thought processes, then people that are just coming in the industry or people that want to learn more wouldn't have anywhere to go. They'd be in this under this assumption of like, oh, well, I know everything because no one's smarter than me.
Yeah, no, definitely. You said it perfectly, man. I think it's the idea of staying humble and challenging yourself. That's the true key when it comes to continuous growth. Never thinking that you have it all figured out, because as soon as you do, you stop growing, you stop learning, and you stop living, really, to be honest with you.
I want to be super respectful of time. I've just got one thing I wanted to touch on was routines. Are you a routine oriented person? Do you have a morning routine, an evening routine? How do you like to sort of structure your day for optimizing success, doing so much, running so many businesses through, you know, your own education, through running businesses, making them successful, through coaching, through training as well? How do you sort of structure your day to make those successful, I guess?
Yeah, so I have a bit of a routine, but nothing too complex. My routine is solely based on the idea of trying to optimize my ability to stay healthy and learn as much as I can. So I'll get up. I just wake up whenever I wake up. I don't set an alarm, and I get up. I'll read for about 30 minutes to an hour, and then I always try to time my walk. I'll go for a walk first thing in the morning to make sure I get my steps in, but I also time it as the sun's coming up. And what that does is that helps, you know, set your circadian rhythm for the day so that you have proper cortisol release, so that you have proper dopamine throughout the day. And then I'll go for a walk as the sun's going down. So that helps release serotonin and melatonin throughout the night so that I get optimal sleep. And those are really and I'll read before bed. So I'll read an hour before bed. I'll read an hour when I get up, and I'll go for a 15-minute walk as the sun's coming up and a 15-minute walk as the sun's going down. And besides that, that's the only structure that I have. Everything else is just, I got work to do, and I love doing it. So it's never a hassle for me to just start working on stuff and getting it done. So, but I try to set up things at the beginning of my day and at the end of my day to make the entire day and night successful as possible.
Oh, brilliant. I love that. I love how basic, how simplified you've made that. I know some people that are very like sort of time diligent. It has to be done here, it has to be done there, it has to be done there. And I used to be that way. And then when it didn't get done, I was like, fucking hell, like it didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah. If your daily routine creates more stress in your life than it gives you freedom, that's always going to be an issue. And my biggest thing right now is just trying to focus on being as present as possible within every moment of my life. And if it's completely detailed out and too routine, it doesn't allow for flexibility. It doesn't allow for presentness. It doesn't allow for your ability to just live your life and love every moment that's in there. So I understand that it may be useful for some people to do it that way in the very beginning so that they understand how important it is to get things done. But you do that long enough, just like kind of when you diet, right? You can't diet your entire life. There has to be a point in time where everything's intuitive and you're just doing the things that you just built habits of doing. And that's kind of where I'm at, is where, like, you know, I have a highlight in the morning and a highlight at the end, and everything else is just, you know, enjoying life and getting work done. And I somehow got lucky enough to enjoy the work that I do, so it never feels like a true burden of my time.
Yeah, I was very like diligent in the second to second that goes by, and got to say, but it was more work than it needed to be. It was actually when Jordan was on my podcast and he said this quote, which I've stuck up, and it is clarity of vision and flexibility of process. That was by, I think it was John Stewart who said that. And it just went light bulb moment. I was like, yes. I was like, that's what it is. There's certain moments where, things need doing in certain times, but for the most part, as you said, just be present in your life, do the work you enjoy doing, make progress.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't need a babysitter, right? Like if I know I have work to do, I just do the work. Like I know, if I have an exam, I don't need my calendar to tell me it's 8 a.m. study. It's like, I don't know. I just feel like micromanaging your life is not necessarily the greatest way to approach having a very happy and fulfilling life. And to me, that's the ultimate goal, is to live a very happy and centered life. And my current schedule allows me to do that.
Yeah, it's like, I'm a grown-up, I should act like it.
Right, man. For sure. I agree. And, it's good to have checks and balances to make sure that you're doing the work that needs to be done. In order to be successful, you have to have ambition and drive. So it's always good to create some type of dynamic to where you're getting the work done that needs to be done, if that's a problem for you. But like I said, you don't want it to be so encompassing that you can't enjoy life and it's more stressful than it is beneficial.
Now, as we're sort of finishing up, we spoke about a lot of stuff today, but can you just give us 2-3 takeaway points that people can implement in their lives today to improve it?
Yeah, I would say just trying to structure your life that gives you freedom, but allows you to get the work done that you need. Focus in on trying to help people more so than trying to help yourself. And I would say trying to build a community and a life that you're proud of in terms of your values and your beliefs, and to allow for an open mind and open dialogue at all times, so that you value the people that you're around more so than you value your own opinion.
Brilliant. That's a great way to sort of sign off. Lastly, where can people reach out, find you, ask questions?
Yeah, so Instagram is just Tony Montgomery Jr. If you're interested in any of our coaching services, it's Team Phoenix Performance. We also have a new business starting up called Coach's Corner U, where we'll be presenting kind of university level type of lectures and content for anyone that wants to be a coach or better athlete. We'll be breaking it down from how to grow your business, how to structure programming, exercise libraries, nutrition, how to set up website design, and pretty much everything you need to be a online coach, so to speak, at a university level. And then if you're interested in any of the supplements that my company makes, it's subjectzerosups.com. Check out the website. We have 6 products out there. Everything is backed by science, evidence-based, that solely focuses on trying to find all the evidence that is on human trials and not rats and in vivo and in vitro and stuff like that. So check it out, subject0_sups on Instagram as well. And that's all and if you're in Portland, Oregon, and you want to come and train at the gym's called Strength Union. I'd love to have anyone out there. And that's it, man. That's where you can find me.
Beautiful. And all that will be linked in the show notes below. Does Subject Zero ship worldwide?
It does. Yep.
Perfect. Beautiful. Because a lot of the guests are from all areas of the globe. So all that will be linked in the show notes below, ladies and gentlemen. So you can literally just click on that. It'll take you to the site and you can follow Tony's journey and check out the gym, the supplement line, and the education stuff. Again, you can do this all. It takes time, it takes work, but you can do way more than you think you can, ladies and gentlemen. Tony, that is us for today. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
If you want to optimize your health, fitness, and lifestyle and learn the tools and the tricks and the knowledge to be able to sustain a healthy and fit lifestyle, then please go check out my books on my website. As a loyal subscriber, you get a cheeky little discount. So I'll see you in there.